This is a game against the Duelist. He's a Forged Alliance Forever player. He has his own YouTube channel, and he recorded this game as he played them and then uploaded it with a replay review to YouTube. And he had mainly one big thing that he pointed out that he really didn't understand, which was he's trying to expand and trying to gain map control, and then I was just overwhelming him with sheer units on just a few metal extractors without expanding at all. And that's something we're going to see this game. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down what is the problem with his approach to map control, and then we're going to look at how I approach map control and how that allows me to win games. So I'm just going to start by saying one thing that's important to note. Constructors don't give you map control. Constructors and expansion are a symptom of map control, not the cause of map control. Armies are the cause of map control, and you cannot have map control without an army. So let's start this video. This replay. Let's start this replay. So, my first factory comes out and immediately I build scouts, while the Duelist immediately puts out a constructor. Now, we can see this is fine, this isn't a problem because even though I have a scout out, it's at the other end of the map. So that's not an issue for the Duelist. But immediately as soon as the constructor is out, he has an enemy tick in his base and no units to defend himself. And that's the problem with building the constructor. In the time that he's built this constructor, I've put a tick in his base, I've got another tick halfway across the map, and I'm starting to put out an army. Now, this is usually fine because I can't do much with a single tick when he has a commander in his base, and that's the first point. The commander is controlling his base, but because I've got something that shoots, I can force the Duelist to do whatever I want with his commander, because his commander is the only unit at this point in time which can respond to my tick. And so what will happen is I make a mistake and I get my tick shot down without actually making him move anywhere. But what I've managed to do is I've managed to force the Duelist into building another gun. And while that's a bit of overkill, it would have been sufficient to just finish this pawn and use that to cover the Duelist's space. I've provoked him into spending metal into something, and that's a bit of control. And that's going to come into another idea that map control isn't so much about controlling the map as it's about controlling the other player. But it's useful to call it map control because how much control you have varies depending on where on the map you are. So we'll continue to play through this. And not much is happening until we get the Duelist putting out another constructor. And then I'll highlight here. The Duelist has 3 pawns out across the map, and they're scattered across the map. I have 2 pawns right beside each other. So a single pawn is much weaker than 2 pawns. 2 pawns can kill a single pawn without much damage. So this pawn isolated here isn't controlling much at all, and it's providing no prevention against these pawns coming through. If these 3 pawns were to be grouped and the Duelist had line of sight on these pawns, then he would be able to identify where they are, isolate them, and destroy them. But here's another consideration to make. I have 1 constructor built, and the Duelist has 2 constructors built and is building a 3rd constructor. If we look at the cost of a construction bot, that's 110 metal, versus the cost of a pawn, which is 48. So you can build 2 pawns for the cost of a constructor, which means I've had the opportunity to enlarge my army, and so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns on the map, while the Duelist only has 3. I've also got a tick and have built more ticks. I've also got more metal in storage. Which means I'm going to be able to gain a larger army and obtain additional control. I want to highlight here, this pawn over here is plenty enough militarily to take out this constructor, and because I don't have any units over here to defend this constructor, this unit could control that portion of the map temporarily and prevent me from expanding in that direction, rather the units all the way over here in the corner where it's not interacting with me at all. It is providing potentially map control because I can't just send a constructor over here, but at this point I haven't been able to have enough time to get a constructor over here. But the other thing to note is I have these two pawns here right near the constructor. They can get to that constructor before his pawn can, and so I sort of control that, and we'll see this more later on. And this, for example, the duelist has expanded with the constructor over here, while I have a tick coming in from this direction. And so this constructor is entirely vulnerable to this tick over here. I'm also going to highlight this attack over here. That was just a raid that happened because this laser tower, say, it does have the range to cover over there, but because units can't choose through each other, it doesn't control past where those two wind generators were, and so again, I was able to just come through and take that out. So we've got a battle in here, and we'll notice how we had an engagement with, he had 5 pawns and I had 4. This is a clear example of how units generate map control. I'm retreating because I'm outnumbered here. If I fight this battle, I'll lose, and the duelist will win with a couple units to spare. So he'd kill my 4 units and, for example, just only lose 3 of him. So I don't want to engage there, which means he has the control. He's able to force my army back, and if he used that control, then he could follow my army in, and potentially, because this army can't stop him because he outnumbers me, then he can take that out. I do have reinforcements over there, but if that reinforcement wasn't there, he would very much be able to take this out, which means I don't have control over there even though I've got expansion over there. He has the ability to control that area, and I don't. So additional maneuvering, and what just happened here? His army moved this way, and my army moved this way. So if you've heard of, like, I think it's a Voronoi diagram. A Voronoi diagram is basically a thing where you have multiple points on of the map, and then you like color regions of the map based on who's closest to that region. So say we have a point here and a point here where each of our armies are. It's like the areas of the map that are closest to our armies goes something like this. That's the amount of the map we control, say, because he can't stop me from attacking anything this side of the line because his army is further away from it than my army is. And so this constructor, if I notice that I control this region of that map, that constructor is as good as dead. Especially, I outnumber his army over here, so I don't even need to attack with my entire army, meaning that I can keep this army here, maintain control of this region of the map, and then only send these 3 units down here to take out the constructor, or down here to kill this metal extractor, or even come into the base. Because if I moved my entire army this way, then that will mean that his army is closer to here, which means he controls that area of the map and he can freely take it out. I can bring in reinforcements, but I don't have any reinforcements at this time, and it's going to take me time to build them. Plus, this is equal distance from his army about. So what's going to happen here is I am going to bring these units down away from those units, and as those move that way, I feel free to dominate this area of the map, deal with the isolated units over here, and then just come back over here. And as I've built more units, then I've regained control of this area. Well, he still didn't have any control of that area because I had my army here he had his army here, so I controlled everything that side of the line, including that constructor. So it was a mistake for me to move that way, because he controlled that he could catch me against the edge of the map and destroy me, which is exactly what he did. And having a 5v3, I've lost 2 infantry, and he's only lost 1. There's a red wreck right under there. And so he'll win that battle, and I'll lose 3 bots, and he'll only lose 2. Here's another interesting situation here, because I've got this army in the middle of the map now. Let's say that's the amount of map I control, and I draw it further towards the commander over here, because the commander's slower. So you could say that's the amount of the map I control, but because there are only 3 pawns over here, and I have 8 pawns over here, this line is something more like that. Because down here is where these units can regroup to outnumber me, so the adjusted line for what I control is something like this, right? What he controls is something like this area. He doesn't even control the back of his base. The reason for that is I have so many units. This is enough pawns that I could potentially get a surround on the commander. And the commander has a strong D-gun, but the D-gun only works when units are grouped together. So what I'd do is I'd surround the commander, I get a surround on the commander, and because I outnumber him 8-1, I'd be able to destroy him. So I could just end the game right here, because I'm closer to that commander than any of his reinforcements. The other thing is these maces are very slow, plus these are enough pawns to destroy those maces. So if I can get down there before he gets down there, then I can come in and destroy the base. His maces can hardly stop me because they're too slow. The LLT will only stop like 3 pawns, or technically you can take out a laser tower with 3 pawns. Yeah, so I sort of still have control over his base. The thing to account for there, which is more likely to stop me, is you have the constructor and the build power. So there's potential that if he changed what he was building to pawns, then he'd possibly be able to put out enough units that he can maintain control of his base. But currently, I have control, and he has the power to easily regain control, but I do sort of have control over it. And in a sense, I'm controlling it by forcing him to build pawns in order to defend it, or additional laser towers or something like that. Because these maces and that laser tower alone can't stop me, so I'm forcing him to build something that can stop me. And if he doesn't, which we'll see that he doesn't, that allows me to take it out. The other thing is that, because my pawns over here outnumber these pawns, I can get down to these pawns before those can get there. Then I can take out these pawns, continue over here, and take out that. So I basically control all of the map except a region shaped like that. Let's continue a bit. Thank you for the question, Arsenal. And see here, here's an example of him not controlling the map, because if he controlled the map I wouldn't be able to do this, but because his tech is so fast, that sort of expands its range of control, and so like that allows me to raid areas like this, or down here, and spend very little metal to do something. And so he'd have to spend an amount of metal for laser towers or pawns, or a few of his own techs to respond to this. And so an important thing to note here is that, again, taking into account the speed of the tech, which has just raided this area over here, by walking his commander over here, he's lost control over that area. I can get a tick in here, and I've got ticks on the way. I can get a tick in there and destroy that metal extractor and potentially even the raider before his commander can get back, because the commander is so slow. So by moving his commander over this way, he has entirely forfeited control over this area. At this point, he's got a few pawns on the front line within reasonable vicinity of the commander that they could defend it if necessary. But this army could still destroy this army, and this is already dead to that tech. So let's continue. And that tech dies. Because his mace moving down to deal with the tech slowly expanded his area of control, and I could have easily avoided that, but I wasn't paying attention, so that tech just died without doing that much damage. Here's another thing. By spreading out his army, he's weakened his control at any point where this army is. So these are no longer defending those mates. So his control over here is really weak, and I just outnumber them and just fight the units one at a time. And get insane efficiency. Like, I've taken out 2 maces, which are about 130 metal cost, and I only lost 1 of my own pawns. And then most of my other pawns are full health, so I could have entirely just taken out the rest of his army at that point. And that happens when you spread your army out like that. Yeah. But now that his commander's coming back over, he's regaining control of that, because if I continue to engage, not only is his commander able to potentially engage in the battle, especially if he moves his units towards the commander, but because he's got his commander here, suddenly he controls this metal. And once he controls the metal, that's extra resources to him. But what he doesn't control is, now that his army is back here, guess what I'm closer to, and my ticks could still easily take this out. But even if I didn't have my ticks, by pulling back in that way, he's completely opened up this lower region of the map to my control. By moving his commander down, he's also put this entirely in my control. I've got pawns up here, which can deal with this metal extractor. I've got this tick over here, which could deal with these and then come down. Yeah, it's not looking great for him. And so yes, as I come around, because he hasn't responded to this, I'm now about as close to this as this army is. So it's not an entirely vulnerable location. Like, if I attack there, I'm probably going to end up surrounded and going to lose my army. So in a way, he does sort of control that area, because I can get in, but I can't get back out. But what I could entirely do is come in and destroy that metal extractor. So he sort of has control, but it's very tenuous control. We'll also note that as the duelist puts up this laser tower, and he'll put up a second one over here, these laser towers entirely do not control that area over there. So that's a problem. But what the duelist does control now is, now that my army is very small, he controls this area and all that metal extractors there. But he still has basically no control up here, which means the expansion is as good as dead. Another thing that's happened here, he's spread out his control over here. So in a sense, I control this region up to about there, say about there, because my army is larger than his. So he only controls in the range of the laser towers, where he has enough firepower that in an engagement he could win. And we'll see here, as when he engages out here, I lost 2 pawns and he lost 2 pawns. So it was a relatively even trade, but I still outnumber him in terms of army, so I control that reclaim there. And here's the thing. Because I control this area of the map and his army is over here, what I've done is I've maneuvered my army over here just to expand my region of control, because I already control this region of the map. No use me adding additional army there. What I'll do is I'll bring my army down around here to expand my control, and once I'm over here, my control turns into something like this. Like that, because I probably can't take on that second laser tower. But again, providing he doesn't build any additional units and stack a bunch of units there. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration at this point, because this army is, some of these pawns are close enough to get back to the base before they get back to the base. But he doesn't know about... Okay, he does know about them, so he should react to them and bring back. But as this army gets closer, then my control turns into something like that sort of a shape, because his army is all out here on the front line and he hasn't reacted, his commander's too slow to do anything about that. And that results in these units coming here. And so that's the power of flanking. What you'll do is you're expanding your control over the map. And so flanking doesn't only have the bonus of like allowing you to engage better in the battle, but it also allows you to, if you have a larger army overall, just expand your control over the map and bring things into range that weren't previously into range and into your control, including potentially the entire enemy base. And what's going to happen here is he's basically going to lose in his entire base, going to destroy that laser tower, and then he doesn't control any of this area, and I just take most of it out. And at that point it's basically GG. Yeah. Again there, because he spread out his army and engaged like one, like first laser tower was on its own, then the second laser tower was on its own, and then his maces were on their own, and then he fought with the pawns. He spread out his control, which meant that I could kind of maneuver and just eat away a piece of his control at, or army, say, eat away a piece of his control and army one piece at a time. And then what I can do is just maneuver here and gain control. I've got enough of an army sitting back there coming out of my factory that I still control on my side of the map. And now that his army's moved down here, that's a pretty even split down the map, which is fine. But the problem with that is when it gets to the units coming from my factory, because I've got a bunch of units as reinforcements. These are basically his reinforcements. And because I won the battle, that's basically my army. That basically gives me control of what say this region of the map or something like that. Probably allows me to get in here and raid. And because that is a larger army, then I could, and combined with that, then I could expand that to say it like includes all of that, all of this region. So that's kind of what I control at the moment. That said, in this local area, these could very easily just push this way and dispatch with these against the cliff. You're not going to get up here to defend any of that before my army's going to get there. And it's a larger army anyway, so if you do engage, then you're going to lose, and my army will be able to just come through and take this out. So your smartest move here is to probably take advantage of that and pin me against the cliff, because if you pin me against the cliff, you force me to engage, because otherwise I'd see that you outnumber me and I'd just run away. Yeah, and so I come through. Moving the commander back here is good because it establishes control over this area. Your army is close enough to here that you can defend your commander, but just alone, those units could easily take out the commander here. The other thing they could very much do, because you've moved your commander this way, we've got 9 pawns. We can take out each of these laser towers one at a time. This metal extractor up there is entirely in my control. And this constructor over here has just walked into my region of control. It's like the line is approximately there based on where these armies are. And so that constructor is like walking straight into my region of control, and it's just gonna die. I don't know if I actually kill it because I don't have the line of sight, but I've got ticks and pawns there to deal with it. And so yeah, that's exactly what I do. It's like he's ceded control over this portion of the map by moving his commander this way. And so I just take advantage of that and go and kill it immediately before I lose the opportunity. Because this constructor has walked into my area of control, Then I go and attack it, and even though he comes to stop me, he can't because I'm closer to the constructor. And so I'm going to kill that constructor before he can kill me. But then he can proceed to like trap me against the edge of the map. We'll also look at this battle while we're here. What's happened here is that he's got a large number of units that are very low health. And so he's gone up on the hill, which means that he's slowed down, which means I can catch up to him. And then I catch up to him basically one unit at a time. This unit can't fire through that pawn that's in front of it. This one can't fire because it's too far away. And so I basically skirt the edge, take out one pawn at a time, and yeah, take out the low health pawns first. So yeah. And so yeah, we'll see right here exactly how these pawns take out one laser tower at a time. I just stop just at range of the next laser tower and just fire and then take out all of that. And so here's an interesting thing to note here. He's got this army over here and only one pawn here. I've got a few ticks here. These ticks are fast enough that they can come up here faster than those pawns can intercept them. So in a way, I kind of control this region of the map at the moment. We'll just highlight that. Let's speed it up a bit. Yeah, that was another example there, that battle of me trying to take out his pawns one at a time. But he responded, so that wasn't that great. Yeah, by withdrawing those pawns over there, he ceded control of this metal over here. Otherwise, he'd have been able to reclaim it and boost his economy. But by moving those pawns back, he lost control over that area. And then at this point, my army just vastly outnumbers him. Here, his commander has walked into an area of my control now because his army is entirely over here, which means that these units are much closer to his commander. His base is also essentially in my control. There are enough pawns that they could walk straight through those laser towers. There are also enough pawns to take out these pawns, but those are pawns so they can just run away. So, sort of, in this sense, I basically control the entire map at this point. I can't, like, attack all of the map, but I can literally attack anywhere on the map that I want without any negative repercussions. Including his base at this point. Those maces would put up a good fight, but not that well. Moving his commander all the way up there, he's ceded control over this metal extractor, and by not moving back to, like, his commander couldn't stand up against that army anyway, but yeah, he's created that vacuum there. Now I could take out the commander there, but I want to see this attack actually come in, so I don't, because what he's doing is he's walking these units straight into an area of my control. What I should have done in that engagement is I should have let him come down the hill before he can see those pawns, such that when I run back at him, then he has to climb up the hill and he goes really slowly, and then I can just kill him without him running away. But yeah. And this will be GG.